Hey, what's up guys? So I'm going to talk about tinting a surfboard or pigmenting a surfboard in this video. And my hair's getting really long. Okay, it's been a while since I've had a haircut and it's not like I can run out to the barber shop. So I better do it myself. Normally I put this on to sand the surfboard, but this will do to keep the hair off me. You know, ask me 3 months ago, would I be doing this and posting it on the internet? I would have said, hell no. And I'm not even going to bother to get a mirror. I'm just going to do this with my monitor. This is not the easiest thing to do. It's like reverse. You know, I could ask Paula to do this, but where's the fun in that? My hair starts growing out and then it kind of goes and then flops. So don't get this in the glassing job. Best part about this, if I screw it up, it's not like anyone's gonna see it. Man, the money I'm gonna save. Whew. My barber's gonna think I'm cheating on him. Hey, if I can make a surfboard, I can cut my own hair. Maybe just touch it up a little bit and even it out, but it'll do. That'll do. Static. Just the thing. Alright, that's better. I'll fix up the rest later. Anyways, glassing. Specifically tinting and glassing. So, on my longboard build here that is progressing along, I know it's been a while since I've posted anything on this, because I think I posted a video of this maybe back in November or December. Anyways, I'm getting around to it. I want to do a tint job on this surfboard, and I thought this would be a good time to do a little talk about how to do tinting. Now, my experience with tint jobs have been mixed. Typically speaking, the darker the tint, the more imperfections that will show up. Kind of like on a really dark car. Dust on, say, a black car or a darker colored car, really glossy, you can just really see the imperfections. They just pop. And it's just no different with a tint or a pigment job. Now, I should talk about what's the difference between pigment and tint. Basically, a pigment job is just opaque and much darker, whereas a tint job is something like this, where it's translucent. I'm going to do a tint job. I have pigments. I have this resin pigment. It's going to be lime green, and this pigment can be tint as well. You just don't add as much of it, and that makes it translucent. Now, I want to talk really quickly about specifically tinting epoxy combined with EPS foam. Traditionally, surfboards were made in polyurethane foam. And the beautiful thing about polyurethane foams are they're incredibly homogeneous. When you work with them, the way when you sand it, the particles break off and they're really nice and smooth. Not the case with EPS foam, aka styrofoam. This is, I think this is 2 pounds per square foot density foam, and that's like really dense foam. However, it still has a tendency to tear when you're working on it. So, because if you look, the beads are quite large. The problem then lies in that if it tears, pigment then fits in those little voids. And what happens is if you have, sorry, I said pigment, but pigment or tint. what happens is the color lies in those little divots or holes, and it makes those areas look darker. So you don't get a nice, consistent, homogeneous color throughout your board, and that's a problem. So what you need to do, and I did some testing here, is you need to make sure to seal your board so that you don't get those low spots, because unlike polyurethane foam, as I mentioned, EPS foam, much harder to get it nice and smooth. Even if you work with the best, like finest sandpaper, you're still going to get little imperfections. So you have to seal your board, especially if you're going to work with a dark pigment or tint. The better job you have it smooth and consistent without any voids or craters for the pigment to build up, the better your pigment or tint job will be. Now, so I did some testing. When you mix up your pigment in with your epoxy, and I'm going to talk specifically on epoxy because that's where I have more familiarity or experience. I don't have much experience with polyester resin because most of the boards I make are EPS foam or XPS foam, expanded and extruded polystyrene. This is a little puck left over from when I was tinting this. Look how much darker this looks. So when it builds up, look how, like, that's a really cool bright color. However, when you look at it here, when I applied it and thinned it out, look how much lighter it is. So when you go to apply your resin to your board, you want to make sure that you test it out on, you lay it out on a piece of paper just to see what color it will look like when it's thinned out. Because what's in the pot will look very different than what it looks like on your board. The amounts that you use, I'm not sure. There's charts on, it depends on the type of pigment you use, but this stuff here is incredibly potent. Like, this was like, for this amount here, that was like half a drop, and look how green that looks. So it's incredibly powerful because it's a pigment, not a tint, because tints tend to generally be a little bit lighter. Now, I've talked about the coloring, but what about the process to do the tinting? So what I did here on the back and the front, and then also on this sample piece here, is this one here is I did a sealed and unsealed part of a piece of polystyrene. Unfortunately, I wasn't thinking, and I applied the clear epoxy on the non-sealed side, and then on the sealed side, I applied the tint, and also with multiple patches too, to see how the pigment would look, or the tint would look built up, because more layers of glass equals more layers of color, and you're going to get variations. It'll be darker and lighter depending on how many layers you have. Also, your tint job or pigment job will always be on the lamination coat. You don't do it to the hot coat or the gloss coat because it's very hard to get them evened out. Now, so you apply your tinted epoxy to the lamination coat, to the fiberglass. So that's what this looks like here, right? So this, you can hear that is lamination. And once you have that done, you allow it to set up, then you sand all your edges. Now, where you might run into problems is, say, on the nose and the tail of the board where you do your relief cuts, you have a bit of an overlap. You want to make sure to sand those quite even to the remainder of the rail, because if you have any overlap, like here, so where the relief cuts overlap each other, you're going to get a variation in color. So it's very important to get that smooth. And this is why if you do a darker lamination coat or a darker pigment or tint job, it's much harder to get it to be very even, because the darker the color, the more of the compounding effect you'll get. So on your first tint job, I highly recommend doing something lighter. Yellow is very forgiving. This green looks like it might be forgiving. So let me just show you what this looks like up close. So I'll do a close up here. The sealed side here looks fine. It's all very even color. It looks really great. Even where I have two layers, so I have, this is one layer, this is two layer, and this is three layers. It all looks nice and even. It looks really good. Now, on this side where I don't have the sealer, it doesn't matter as much because this is just clear resin. And again, I wanted to be able to do tint on the non-sealed side. So what I did was I redid one on this, and this is a block that is not sealed. And just look at how uneven that color is. right here where that's super dark, that is a big divot that I made sure to really hollow out just to exaggerate what it would look like. But then when you look at the rest of it, and this is just one layer of glass, by the way, so when you look at this, look at the variation. Now down here, this doesn't have any glass on it at all, but this was just roughly sanded, and then this mimics what a sanded surfboard before sealing would look like, or the surface would be like. And just look how uneven that is. Super, super important to seal your surfboard before you do any tint or pigmentation. Also, when you go to mix up your tint or pigment in the epoxy, or I guess fiberglass or polyester resin, you want to make sure that you mix up more than you need, because it's really hard if you run out partway through to measure up more epoxy and then add pigment or tint to it and have it match up to look the same. You don't want to be running out, so you want to make sure that you have more than you need. It's better to have more and waste it than not have enough and ruin your glassing job altogether, or your pigment or tint job. Yeah, so not much else to add to that besides I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm glad I got my hair cut. I think it looks okay. I'm just looking at the monitor. I'm gonna go in the house now, look in the mirror, and maybe touch it up. Yeah, so I'm eventually getting around to posting videos on this longboard build. It's gonna be a while, but and I probably won't get to surf this board for quite some time because all the beaches are still closed. So I'm not in any particular rush to get this finished, except for I want to get it finished because I think it's going to look really cool when it's done, and I think I haven't decided on if I want to do a full tint job on the bottom and the deck, or just the deck. So more to come on that. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. I must say, this little cordless Phillips shaver, this works really good. This little trimmer, this gets a thumbs up from me.